Hi, I'm Emma Crowhurst and I'm going to show you how to make a really brilliant and versatile tomato sauce. You can do so many things with it, it's great. The ingredients we're going to use an onion or some onions, carrots, I'm going to be using some oil, tin tomatoes or passata, garlic, but I'm going to be using fresh garlic. Then we've got some herbs and some stock cubes. So first thing I need to do is muck about with the onion. So to be able to chop an onion is a great thing, but you need to be safe. So I'm using a medium-sized cook's knife. Going to hold it on the heel of my hand, holding the onion, and I'm going to take the top off. Now, to take the top off, you need to know which is the top or the bottom. The bottom is the hairy bit, and the top, well, it's the top. So we're going to cut the top off. Take enough off so you can stand that onion up safely, and it won't rock about. Make an arch with your hand, cut it straight through, and then get rid of all these nasty papery bits. We don't want those going in the food. So then you need to peel it. So some people like to peel it with a knife. Otherwise, you've got to get your fingers in there and just pull off the edges and then sweep all this stuff out the way. We don't want those anywhere near the food. Otherwise, you're going to get these like hairy bits in the food and you don't want that. So if you've got a machine, you can peel them. You can take the ends off and then you can put the whole thing through a machine if you've got a little sort of whizzer. But you can leave the end on or you can take it off like that. So then what we're going to do, make sure that the root, if you're right-handed, is going away to the left, and you're going to draw the knife back. So as I'm going in, the knife is a little bit in front of the root, and then I'm drawing it back so you get the cutting power of the knife improved. Carefully, carefully, carefully at the end. Same on the other side. So the idea with this is that it's going to make you cry less because the onion is still intact. So at this point, the onion is not falling apart. Now I'm going to turn it sideways. So I've gone through that way already. Going to go sideways. Again, I'm drawing the knife back and I'm going to cut the onion into smallest bits that I can. So this does take a little bit of practice, but obviously you'll go a bit more slowly than me, but it's a brilliant thing to be able to do. So just going to do the other side and making like what we call the claw with your hand holds everything safe. Now, onions are really cheap, so they're a great start and essential in so many recipes, so it's a good idea to know how to do it. So what I'm going to do now is bung that into a pan, but first of all, I'm going to put a tiny bit of oil in here. So this is essentially incredibly low fat, loads of fibre because we're going to use lots of veg, and we can start off with the onions going in and they're going to be the first thing to cook. So I'm going to turn on my little stove. Woohoo, there we go. And those are going to start to warm up while I'm preparing the other ingredients. So the next thing I'm going to look at is some garlic. Now with the garlic, I'm using a round bladed knife. So it could be a cutlery knife or this is a little palette knife to get the cloves out of the head. So that's called a head and this little thing is called a clove. So then what we want to do, use a cutlery knife or a round bladed knife. If you don't want to use a sharp knife, whack it. You will have seen chefs doing this. And this means that the paper comes off super easily. So there's not much weighing out in this recipe. You can really, use a lot of what you want. So if you like garlic, you can use loads. Obviously, you could use garlic out of a tube, but it's going to be a bit more expensive. So this stuff is nice and cheap and really good to use. So once you've peeled it, take off the root because it's the same member of the onion family. And then what you're going to do is just chop it a bit. And then you can use a little bit of salt and you can squidge it. So if you use a flat knife and just really squish it down, and then the salt acts as a little bit of an abrasive. So if you can hear it, you can hear a little scratchy sound because what's happening is the knife is pummeling the garlic into the board. Obviously, you could use a garlic crusher, but I can never be bothered with a small quantity because I can't be bothered to wash the garlic crusher. So I always just sort of squish it like this. So once it's nicely squished, you really do have to press hard, but once it's squished, that can just go into the pan, and the pan is now starting to make nice noises. Now, if you start to cry, don't rub your eyes with your hands, because obviously that will make it worse. Just keep your head well back and blink. And then the next ingredient that we're going to use are some carrots. So with the carrots, What we want to do is top and tail. So that means top off, tail off, and then we peel. So going to peel, I've got a swivel peeler, but if the carrots look really clean and you're happy with them, then just give them a wash and you don't need to peel them. But I tend to peel them. So get rid of all the rubbish. And I've got a little compost bin there, which I could put all that stuff in. But as long as it's not on your board, it doesn't really matter if it's just kind of like on the work surface. Okay, so this is another kind of good skill to have. Now, the carrot wants to roll about. So what we do is we make it into manageable lengths. Now I'm going to cut one flat edge. This means it's not going to roll about anymore. And I'm going to cut it into little sort of sticky bits. And then we want to end up with like pencil thicknesses. So you can get loads of vegetables into this tomato sauce. And it means that you've got lots of lovely fibre. And the basis of your sauce is really cheap ingredients, which is good. So make a flat edge. This is all just for safety. And you don't really want big rounds of carrots in your sauce because it just doesn't sort of look very nice. But if you want to cut them like that, it doesn't really matter. But this is quite quick to do. So what I do then is put all my little pencil thicknesses together like that. Give this a little stir. And I'm going to start to turn this right down now. So this wants to be quite a low heat. So now I'm going to chop the carrot into nice small pieces. So one little cook's knife like this is quite useful. You can use it for loads of things. So I'm going to put that in. Now what we want to do with this is to cook it over a nice low heat. And you can do a really large quantity of this. If you're going to do that, you might want to wear swimming goggles, otherwise you will be crying. But you can do a nice large quantity, and the more you do in the pan, the more it kind of keeps itself cool because it produces steam. Steam evaporates, and if you lose all the steam, you're going to end up with this starting to burn, and we don't really want it to colour too much. Otherwise, it's going to be possibly burnt and of too much caramelisation. So sweating basically means to cook without colour, and it's that's going to produce all the natural sweetness that we want. So this, if you can be bothered, you could do 20 minutes, and if you've got a lid, you don't need a lid particularly, you could just use a baking sheet, chuck it on the top, it will trap the steam drips on the bottom of the pan and keeps the whole thing nice and cool. So we want to wait now for 20 minutes for the onion, garlic and carrot to start to sweat. But I could also have in there chopped up leek, chopped up celery, all of those vegetables are brilliant. So often I look in my fridge and see what needs using up and then lob it in this tomato sauce. So we're going to wait for that to cook, or not. In fact, we've got the old here's one I created earlier moment. So I'm just going to swap them over. So here's one that has been sweating. I'm just going to turn it up a bit. So you can see in here that this is really nice and soft, and it kind of goes what they call translucent, so it loses that like kind of solid look, and it becomes nice and soft, and all that lovely sweetness has come out. And in fact, all of that oniony stuff that makes you cry is gone from here now. And if I'm brave enough to put my hand in, this carrot, oopsie-daisy, is pretty squidgy. Okay, so everything is now nice and soft. So the sweating stage is finished, but that's 10 or 20 minutes, depending on the quantity that you do. So if you're doing loads, then that can be quite a long time. So now we're ready for the exciting stuff. So we've got tinned tomatoes. So try and get chopped ones rather than the whole ones, because otherwise you'll have to sort of fork them down. You could also use passata. This is sieved tomato. So no skin, no seeds. Probably a bit more expensive, but tinned tomatoes are brilliant for this. So sometimes when I'm making this, I'm using like 4 onions, a whole bag of carrots, 2 or 3 tins of tomatoes, and I'm making a really large quantity because I know that I can use it in so many things. So you hear that sizzle, goes in. We're also going to lob in some water because we don't want to waste any of this. So that goes in, good old sort of swill around, and as soon as the water goes in, it won't burn anymore because the water, we've stopped frying, and now what's happening is we're going to start boiling and then simmering. So we now can turn this up. We're going to bring it up to the boil, and any lovely bits of veg that have got stuck to the bottom of the pan are going to be lifted through the boiling process. So all those lovely flavours are going to be mixing together. So in here now, you can add a stock cube. So if you're not vegetarian, you can use a chicken stock cube if you want. If you're going to make it into a meat sauce, you could use a beef stock cube. But you can just chuck that in because this is going to cook for a while, so that will break down. We're going to put in a bay leaf, and then you could chuck in, I've got some fresh thyme that I got from the supermarket, but you can add dry herbs. Now, dried herbs are brilliant because they're more intense. All the moisture's come out of them, so they're really intense, which means you get more flavour. So don't chuck it straight from the thing because you might end up putting it all in. It's always better to measure it in your hand, and you want about a teaspoon for this kind of quantity. So things like oregano, thyme, rosemary are all in there, which is going to make it taste nice and sort of Italian-like. But what we want now is to give this a good bit of cooking time. The longer you can be bothered to cook it for, the more developed and better the flavours are going to be. And in that case, you need to add some water because obviously there's not much here. And if we keep cooking it, it's going to evaporate and possibly burn. So once it's come up to the boil, I'm going to turn it down, I'm going to simmer it, and I'm going to cook this for maybe half an hour or so, but as long as you can be bothered to do. And then you've got your fantastic versatile tomato sauce. Right, so we've got our delicious finished tomato sauce. But I want to tell you some more ideas about how you can make this into loads of different meals. So if you want to make a meat-based sauce for bolognese, lasagna or cottage pie, you can take some beef mince, fry it off in a pan so it's nice and brown, and then pop that in when the tomato sauce starts its cooking time. You need to cook it for about 40 minutes or longer if you can, and it's going to be delicious. Served with a baked potato, lasagna, cottage pie, bolognese with pasta, fantastic. If you want to go a step further, you can take your meat base or not, but add in red kidney beans, dried chilies or fresh chilies, and you can turn your tomato sauce into a delicious chili sauce or a beef chili sauce. So fantastic, served with rice or in a baked potato or in tacos. If you want to go vegetarian, we've got red lentils, which are brilliant. They go straight in when your tomato sauce starts its cooking time with some added water to allow for the fact that the lentils will suck up the water and you don't want it to burn. And into there, you can add your kidney beans, your chilies, so you've got a delicious vegetarian or vegan chili. Fantastic. So all of these recipes are available for you to find online at Food Savvy, with loads of ideas about how you can cook in bulk, avoid food waste, and freeze your food so that at any time you've got a delicious meal in your freezer that you can just pull out to enjoy.